Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be chatting to you all today, but also very in particular my good mate Marco Sera. Many of you who sort of been, probably watching some of my football posts. We're coming to you from the world of football today. You've probably seen some of the photos and videos that me and Marco have shared together online on Facebook and Instagram. Firstly, hello Marco, how you going?
I'm doing very well, thanks Joe. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, mate. Good to see you.
Likewise.
We've been wanting to catch up for a while, and really get some insight into, you've had a real busy last 12 months, 2 years, which has been really exciting, and it's been great getting to know you over that time. But also really just the whole story, how it all came together. I've got a lot of people asking me, how did you get to meet Francesco Totti and all that sort of stuff? So it's really cool to just be able to sit down with you here today and really get some sort of an idea on your story and how it's all come about, mate.
Oh, look, I guess we'll start from the start. I'm
Yeah.
no different to any, Italo, like Australian that's got a passion for our sport. I was born in Italy and I migrated here with my family at a young age. I kind of had no choice. My cousin Andrea Carnevale played in the Serie A, played at the heights of the Serie A during the Diego Maradona era. So he played with Diego.
He was quite a well-known player, Andrea Carnevale. I do remember him as well.
In Italy, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, in Australia, when we had media like Il Globo, he popped up when he scored goals. He wasn't really, a pin-up boy or a player that outside of Italy they actually spoke about. But if you look at his achievements, and if you look at what he actually created, including scoring Il Gol del Scudetto, the goal that sent Napoli to win the first title in 1987. So 10th of May, 1987 is when Napoli won their first ever Scudetto, and my cousin was fortunate enough to score. Yeah.
What a story that was. And so he was playing with Napoli during the Maradona era.
Absolutely, from 1980.
How exciting.
Yeah, so from 1986 to 1991. Diego was there for 7 years. My cousin was there for 6. So naturally, they built a very strong bond together. And up until Diego's death, they were very close friends.
Wow, that's impressive. And what a time to be playing football in Serie A, the 80s. It was kind of like the golden era, wasn't it?
It definitely was. And that's, look, everyone's got an opinion as to when the golden era was. But when you've got players from all over the world go into the Serie A, just to be there, obviously your Diego Maradona, your Platini, Van Basten, Hullet, Zico, to name a few.
It's funny you say. I was looking back at some of the records back then, and I realised that if you're a non-European player, you couldn't really win the Ballon d'Or back then.
Correct.
So it was just really just skill and hard work that Maradona made what he did of himself. He didn't quite get maybe all the personal accolades that he deserved, but. So it was only European players back then that could win the Ballon d'Or. I think that was right up to 1995. Sorry.
Yeah. So up until 1995.
And Van Basten won 3 of them.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
correct.
He was a machine, man. Van Basten was just next level, wasn't he?
I thought, look, I did some research on that probably only about 10 years ago because in 1986, when Diego Maradona won not only the World Cup with Argentina, but the first title with Napoli.
What a 12 months he had.
He didn't win the Ballon d'Or. I was thinking that's a bit strange. It was a Russian player that had won it. And I found out why that was the case.
So I think Platini, I was looking back at the records a while ago, recently, sorry. Platini won 2 or 3, Van Basten won 3. I think even Hullet managed to win one as well. So yeah, it really, for me looking back, all I remember hearing about when I was a kid was, Maradona. Obviously, he was really the pin-out player. But it really was, in my opinion, that 80s and 90s. It was probably one of the best times to be watching Serie A.
It was a different sport, in my opinion. It was the elite at the time globally. You had players like David Platt playing for Bari. Now Bari was almost a second division side. but the reason for that is players just wanted to play in Italy,
Yes. Yeah.
regardless which team
Yeah.
took them on. And then obviously Platt went on to do great things with Juve and Sampdoria.
Yes, that's right. I remember he was off. Oh, yes, that's right. He was over at Juve and Sampdoria.
But he started at Bari. He got his foot in the door in the most, I guess, prestigious league in the world at the time.
And he was one of the more prominent English players playing in Italy at that time, from what I remember.
He was, because
Yeah.
one of the very first in the modern game was Ian Rush that went to like Juventus in the mid
Yes.
80s and it wasn't a successful stint for him.
And there was another guy as well. I think he joined AC Milan. Was it Haitley or
Haitley for
Yes,
1985. Yes,
yeah.
85, 86.
So it was a bit of a slow transition for him as well.
It was.
It's kind of been similar, I think, with Italians going over to England. I know we're probably going a bit off topic, but we could talk about football all day long. Yeah, that's just.
I think Benito Carboni was the first Italian player that played in the EPL.
Yeah. Which team was he playing for? I'm trying to remember now. I think it was. Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Could be West Ham. I can't remember.
Might have been. Yeah.
But yeah, I remember. Look, this is before the internet. This is before social media.
Yeah.
In my opinion as well, social media is fantastic.
He wasn't a bad midfielder as well.
Fantastic.
Carboni.
He was a great player. A lot of players today.
I still laugh about when when Di Canio went over to West Ham.
Oh.
It was like an alien stepped on the field and he was just doing
Phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Strong personality.
Yeah. It was just like people were he wowed that whole crowd. It was incredible to watch, incredible to see. It was like a magician just walked onto the field.
He
really.
was.
Yeah,
I think one of the very few best Italian players never to really excel in the Italian national team.
And that goes to show how competitive Italian football was, and like the amount of the sort of players that you've got here just on your wall here. And we're going to talk about your collection eventually because it's amazing. But it was just next level. And I was having a conversation with one of my friends a few weeks ago. But like it's just. You look at the names that were at that Juventus team, especially in the early 90s. One of those posts came up on Facebook recently, and it's like the amount of people that Roberto Baggio kept out of the starting 11 was just phenomenal. Like players that just went out and just excelled at so many other clubs, but it just goes to show you the sort of level that he was on at that time. Like, and Di Canio was one of them. Well, Di Canio was. Yeah, sometimes starting, sometimes not. But then you had other players competing, Casaracchi, Schillaci, Vialli, Ravanelli. These guys were all just legends in their own right. And it was just such, and that was just Juventus alone. That was like, what a team that was.
And it's like the 1990 Italian side, that the Serie A is at its peak, at its all-time peak.
So your cousin, Andrea, he played in the Italian national team.
He did.
Yep.
Yeah, he did. He was a starting player, starting 11, played for in the Olympics in 1988 as well.
Wow.
With Italy.
Yeah, great.
A lot of the players that were played in that Olympic side also, they transitioned to that 1990 World Cup team.
Yeah.
There was a lot of players that got kept out of that team as well because of how the league was competitive. Like I can name 3 strikers that could have easily, in my opinion, played or be selected for the 1990 World Cup.
Easy.
And they weren't there.
Yeah, easily. It was so competitive back then just to get on the field, let alone, getting into the starting lineup and the squad alone. It was just such a variety of players. And look, I think it even got tougher a bit later on, to be honest. I know it's kind of shifted where we're at now, but that's another conversation. Yeah.
The other thing is what people need to not forget is that era, only 3 foreigners were allowed to play.
That's right.
At any given one time.
That's right. And that's affected the local game so much.
It has.
It's affected the league. It's affected the local game a lot. All right, mate. So tell us a little bit about just a little bit about you personally, your story, your background. I know you mentioned you came over from Italy, but you were born in Italy, sorry.
I was, yeah.
And how old were you when you came over here?
So I was 5 years old.
Yep.
So my family migrated here. We were on a 6-month visa and we ended up staying.
Oh, great.
43 years.
Yeah. So. Ended up calling Australia home, right?
Definitely.
That's
so
awesome.
I've only just recently become a dual citizen. So I'm grateful for what Australia has provided to our family.
It is the lucky country.
It is, and there's a lot of things that we do take for granted. But more importantly, your passion for the game will never cease, regardless where you are.
Yeah.
We are geographically away from the action.
Yep.
We are 24 hours away from everything. It's become, the gap's become a lot smaller because of the internet.
Yeah.
And because of social media. What I mean by that is there was so many great players in the 80s and 90s in Australia that really didn't get
incredible players.
The ability to even have a trial.
Yeah.
And some of the players that did, they were extremely well adversed with a network.
Yeah.
And obviously very good at what they did on the field. So you can't take that away.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Australia it really rose, that golden generation of Australian footballers as well really shined through. Excuse me, it really shined through. It was the 80s and 90s, and I just remember even watching the NSL back then, and how awesome it was, you know, to watch Melbourne Knights versus South Melbourne, or you know, Adelaide City versus Sydney Olympic, and it was a great era for me growing up as a kid watching that. I loved it. I loved it, and we had so many great players to look at and model and watch and learn from. So that was really exciting.
The NSL produced a lot of great players, and we all know that. The 2006 Australian side, that was the golden era of our generation. Most of those players playing in that 2006 side, as we know, were NSL players, NSL players.
That's right.
Well, I had a bit of a discussion with a friend just recently. If Maldini, Baresi, Totti, Messi, if they all were who they were and grew up in Melbourne, would they have achieved the heights that they achieved?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question, in my opinion, is no, because geographically you're in a different environment.
Yep.
You've got different access to the game.
Yep.
You've got a different pathway.
Yep.
And most of them would have just ended up working for their parents.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I think your environment is a big thing, and I think where we've sort of seen what's succeeded so much for the players overseas is their youth development. I think that says a lot. And it really shines through. I think, but it's also the passion for the game as well. I think from, you know, being that, you know, in Europe especially, or other parts of the world where the passion for the game is so high, whereas here it's, you know, Australians love their football, but I wouldn't say they're as passionate. I feel like there's a lot of other codes as well that they're just as passionate about, or if not more, and that's okay as well. You know, that's the world we live in. But I think it's you know, it does over time. It does, you know, it does display a certain result for the national team. You know, and that's where it's at. But in saying that, moving forward to you growing up. So you moved over here when you were 5.
Yeah.
Which team did you support as growing up in Seria A? What was your main team there?
It depends who you ask.
Yeah.
Depends who you ask. So, because of my cousin played for Napoli from 1986, me being in primary school, naturally I started to support.
You must
Napoli.
have been one of the most popular kids at school for sure.
I was in grade 6 when they were at their height.
My cousin plays with Diego Maradona. The kids must have just been that like, yeah.
But it was natural for me. It wasn't something that it was abnormal, because we knew our cousin played at the heights. He started playing in Serie A since 1983 with Catania, and then moved to.
Great! So he started at Catania.
Yeah, well, he started. His first Serie A match was with Avellino.
Yeah.
And then he went to Catania. He went to Cagliari. Udinese with Zico in 1985.
Another phenomenal player, Zico.
And Edinho were there at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously did well for those 2 seasons, and then Napoli came calling.
Yeah. Wow.
So played football at grassroots.
Yeah.
And really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And never stopped playing. Still having a kick now. But with, I guess, that strong connection with my cousin, I started supporting Napoli. Napoli's still in my heart.
Yeah.
In 1990,
I think they're a team that's in everyone's heart.
it is.
They're kind of like, how do you explain it? They're kind of
The underdogs.
Yeah, they're the underdogs.
Yeah.
They're kind of they're kind of like the Bulldogs of
They
the Serie
are.
A, right?
They are. There's a lot of reasons for that, because if you
that's
visit the city, you won't
Yeah.
understand why.
Yeah.
They've had earthquakes. They've had organised crime. They've had a lot of negative impact to the city, and the people at Napoli, the majority of people at Napoli are very charismatic.
They've got great pizza.
They've got great pizza. That's where it comes from, allegedly.
Allegedly.
And they welcome anyone that goes to the city.
Very warm. Yes, that's very
So
true.
that's all they have. They have family life during the week, and they go to the stadium on the Sunday. You know, the Napoli stadium is in the suburbs. There's no parking really around the stadium. People walk to the ground.
Yeah.
So that's.
I'd love to visit it one day. But that was something that really sort of grabbed me. Looking back at all the footage from back in the 80s and just how they became, especially when Maradona sort of just took leadership of that club and really sort of, he took them to another level, and how grateful the fans were, how passionate and how much the fans were by his side. It was like, in saying that, this isn't a tongue-in-cheek comment, but for the Neapolitans, he really is. Like he's like a god,
He still is. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been to Napoli a number of times. I had the opportunity to go back again last year in 2024, and if you do go into I quartieri spagnoli and a lot of other important, I guess, streets of the city, he is plastered everywhere.
Yeah, it's like he's one of the local saint or something. Yeah,
even a jewelry shop that has nothing to do with sport has got a photo of him.
Yeah, there you go. That was quite similar when it wasn't probably to that extent, but when I remember one of the first times, more so recently, I went to Rome. There was a lot of getting back onto more recent times with Totti as well. It was evident. It was so evident, especially in certain quarters of Rome. He especially I think was it 2008 when I went. He was like the Prince of Rome.
Yeah.
Most places you went to, there was a photo of Totti, signed photo of Totti. It's just that level of status, celebrity status that footballers have, especially in Europe. It's quite next level, isn't it?
And that will continue
Yeah.
for a very long time.
Yeah.
Because you've just got to look what Totti achieved for Roma in those 20 years that he was playing for them.
Yeah.
So it's not going to die anytime soon. You just look at the Diego scenario. A different level, yes, but still hailed as a hero.
Yeah, that's right.
And a saviour of the city.
Yeah, he was, and that was one thing I respected about Francesco Totti. He stayed with that club for the whole time. The whole time he had offers left, right, and centre, but he just loved the fans and was so committed to the club that he wouldn't leave. He wouldn't leave. They had to pretty much drag him out of there. Really.
No, it's true.
Yeah,
he did have offers, and
Yeah.
I think the most recent one, if you want to call it recent, was probably 2002. 22 years ago, when Real Madrid had a contract ready for him.
Yeah.
So and he didn't leave. So
And he was right at his peak. Then.
He was, yeah.
It was sort of like, when looking back, I sort of look at when did his peak really hit? And for me, from my observation, it was really after that Euro 2000 tournament. Yeah, where he sort of just took off. He was great when he was younger, but after Euro 2000, it really just sort of escalated. We went to another level for him. Yeah,
I mean, the average player peaks at the age of 26.
Yeah.
Now the average player can peak at the age of 30.
Yeah, yeah.
With sports medicine, diet, and a lot more education about off the field, like requirements, players are playing a lot longer, and we're seeing that now.
Yeah. So with getting back to the football events that you've been promoting, I think the first one that you did was roughly about 2 years ago now.
It was in 2022 with my business partner, Anthony Bucchino. We run a business called Italian Football Legends.
Oh yes, I've seen that on Facebook.
Yeah. So Italian Football Legends is basically exactly that. We try to bring ex-Serie A players to Australia.
Yeah.
Hopefully, most of them are still known.
Yeah.
We try to do our best to bring players that were only retired in the last 5 years. So we've got access to a network there as well through my cousin.
Yep.
In 2022, we brought Giuseppe Giannini
Yes.
and Salvatore Schillaci.
That was a great event. I remember that. That was, yeah.
It was fun in many areas. I mean, a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old kid didn't know who they were. Their grandparents or dad did.
Yeah.
So it was a different market that we were focusing on. But it went relatively well, and we had some really good times with them.
Oh, I think it went really well. Like for me, it was like meeting one of my childhood idols, right? Really, like that was one of the first names I ever heard watching football as a kid. That was Schillaci. Was yeah, he really had the status, especially at Italian 90. He was the greatest striker that the Italian team had. So
it did. I mean, sharing some time with them, we obviously got to know more about them. Schillaci obviously provided us with a bit of an insight on how it all happened, for him as well. He mentioned that in 1982, when Italy won the World Cup, he was 17 years old playing for Messina, and after the win, he was on top of the boot of a car with the Italian flag, waving it, and saying to himself, "I wish one day I get to watch Italy play at a stadium."
Yeah.
Watch them, because back then to watch the national team was a big honour.
Yeah,
it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And 8 years later, he actually was a star.
Was the star of the World Cup.
Star of the World Cup.
What a story that is.
Yeah, that's it's a great story. He released a book as well, and he's got some of this information in his book as well. Unfortunately, passed away about 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, that was really sad. That really hit home for me as well. Was so grateful to be able to meet him and see him when you brought him down here. But it was, it hit home. It's like, when you kind of you look up to one of your childhood idols, and he's not there anymore. So it was. But thank you for organising that and arranging that. And more recently, the last 12 months, we've had some big names down here as well. Yeah,
the last 12 months, although Italian football legends have been involved in that, a different agency brought them out.
Yep.
And we got involved from a social media, marketing and memorabilia perspective.
Yep.
So I was involved in a tidy event organised by a different agency, which was run well.
Yep.
And also Cannavaro came in October.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Another fantastic achievement by the agency as well.
Yeah.
And we get involved where we can if they want us to. And we did some work around social media. We did some work around getting numbers to the table on certain events. And more importantly, we helped out with all the memorabilia. Yeah.
No, it was great. It was great to hear the different perceptions of stories from Totti and Cannavaro, 2006, champions. And champions in their own right, individually as well. Well, world champions from a Italian national team.
Definitely. I mean, what hit home for me with Cannavaro was he's the last player to win the Ballon d'Or as a defender.
Yeah. I think he's pretty much the last Italian player to win it. Full stop. Yeah.
He is. Yeah. Last Italian player and last player to win it as a defender. Not many defenders get to win the Ballon d'Or.
What a great story it was that he shared though. That training in that training session with Maradona.
Yes.
I couldn't. That was one I took with me, and I said that was incredible.
Because during the Maradona era, Napoli, Cannavaro was a ball boy.
Yeah.
Initially.
Yeah, he was like 15 years old or something. Yeah.
Because he played for the Napoli youth team.
Yeah.
And then obviously, naturally broke into the youth academy and started training with the seniors. And in that team, obviously, there was the winning side of the 1987 team. And being a defender, he got asked to mark and man mark Diego Maradona. Imagine that at training.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine that at 15 years old. You're going to man mark the greatest player to ever kick the ball.
So, and his story was, if you remember, because at that age you got something to prove, but at the same time you are marking one of the world's greatest players.
Yeah.
So he actually didn't hold back and went in as he should as a defender. And someone from the sidelines screamed out to him and said, "Calm down, you please don't hurt Maradona because he needs to play on Sunday." And he then felt a tap on his shoulder, and Diego said, "Don't worry, play your game. You're doing a good job."
Yeah.
So that's who Diego was as well.
Yeah.
with players on and off the field. I'm still reading articles now of interactions that he's had on the field with Franco Baresi, with Maldini, the way that he was a genuine and humble player and person.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't see that in today's social media articles that you read.
Yeah, exactly. The media painted a certain picture around Maradona.
They did, especially the Poms. So.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Obviously, that was, there was a lot of, a grudge between the British and the Argentinians.
It still is, yeah.
And it still is. It's still there, isn't it?
Right? It still is. I mean, Shilton still talks about how Maradona cheated with the hand of God, and I think he's still upset that he was one of the tallest player in the World Cup, Shilton, and he got beaten by a guy that was 5'5". So, but then he forgets that the second goal that was scored in that game was one of the world's best goals in history.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Done with his feet. So
yeah, exactly, and that says everything, doesn't it? He took on pretty much half the whole team, really.
It does. I mean, you have to also understand that during that era, Maradona went to Napoli 4th of July 1984. He's come from Barcelona. Barcelona had just won the title, one of the best and biggest clubs in the world at the time. He's transferred to Napoli, who were almost getting relegated the year before.
Yeah.
So you've got to ask yourself the question, there wasn't much good players or caliber of players that could win a title at that Napoli
it was chalk and cheese. He was going from, a European superpower club to a minnow club, let's be honest, in southern Italy. And then fighting in the world's toughest league. This is where, when people say to me, look, they compare the current era of players, and I don't want to drop names because I know the names that are going to come out.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can't compare it.
You can't compare it for a number of reasons. Yeah. The game was different back then.
Yeah.
Even in the World Cup in 1986, some of the pitches were potato fields. Yeah. Right. So if you look closely, some of the footage, they were terrible. Yeah. And this is at the peak, right? Yeah. Today, a fourth division team in any country has got cured grass and it's been looked after and plus the protection of the referee that you get today is a lot better than what it was back then. Some of the tackles that were done on Diego Maradona in that era, they were instant red cards today.
Oh, so. Definitely. Like I remember reading in his autobiography that he said in particular from the 1982 World Cup when he got red carded against Brazil. Right, I think that was the last game that he played, but he constantly spoke about in his autobiography and wrote about it that the game before that against Italy, where he was man-marked by one Claudio Gentile, and he reckons that he was that butchered and that taken to town by Gentile that he would often even wake up at night having nightmares about Gentile, which is hilarious. Like, I mean, to even think that you could experience something like that on a football field is next level. But,
And that was the World Cup.
And that was the World Cup, 1982 World Cup. And 4 years later, he went on and won it.
He did. He went on and won it.
I think he scored that goal against Italy on Gentile. I think it might have been.
No, in 1986 he scored against Italy.
Yeah, he did.
It was a 1-1 draw. Altobelli scored a penalty.
Yeah.
And Diego Maradona
I think
scored.
Gentile might have been marking him when he put that one in.
I don't think Gentile was in that side.
He probably wasn't. Yeah, he probably wasn't.
Yeah, no.
I looked back at the footage and I was like, oh, was that him? But yeah.
No, if you look at the goal, it was a left foot inside the box after a bounce.
What a cracker of a goal that was.
It was 1 inch away from the pole. Yeah. And from the post, and Giovanni Galli, the Italian goalkeeper of the time, didn't even dive.
No, he didn't even dive because he didn't even think it was going to go in. It was like it just went straight past him, and before he knew it, the ball was in the back of the net. It was magic. It was next level.
I mean those 4 years, and when we talk about, we go back to comparing players.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't think you can compare players from that generation to now because there's a lot of different. Protocols in place. There's a lot of different ways that we play the game now, and I talked earlier about medicine, diet. gym. Like, for example,
it's way more professional. Yeah.
players are going to the gym today.
Yeah.
They didn't
Yeah.
go to the gym in the 80s.
No way.
They may have done
No.
cardio, but never did any
No.
upper body work.
No.
Or completely different.
And that's
rules.
where, from in my opinion, I think he stands on his own 2 feet. Like we were talking about recent players. Like I think Cristiano's well ahead.
Yeah.
I think Cristiano, in terms of his physique, in terms of how he looks after himself, in terms of his discipline. I think there's a level of professionalism there with Cristiano Ronaldo that you just cannot. I don't think
you can't match that.
You can't match it.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's done really well how he's done it.
It really is. But getting back to what the conversation of that era of Italian Serie A and how competitive it was and how amazing it was. It's looking back now, many of us probably didn't realise it then, but looking back now, it really was one of the golden eras of Italian football.
100%. Golden era of the Italian football for many reasons.
Yeah.
We touched on it earlier. There was only 3 foreigners that were ever allowed to play in any team. I think up until the Bosman ruling came in place in 95.
Yes, the Bosman ruling, yes.
So, because football then became an employment as opposed to a thing that you did for passion, which kind of makes sense because having only 3 foreigners to play for one team, it kind of restricted trade and employment. However, it did kill the game, and it has.
In some ways, it was better too because you had to have 3
Correct.
real good players. Look what Inter did with the 3 Germans. Look at what AC Milan did with the 3 Dutchmen.
Yeah.
It just meant that only the best of the best got picked as well.
Napoli as well, Careca, Alamal, and Diego. So,
exactly. So it's the mediocre players, or the average players, didn't get that chance. And I think in some ways, I don't know. I think in some ways it had its advantages as well. But I think for Maradona specifically, how he led that Napoli team, I think that's the biggest thing that I take out of it. How he took, from what you were saying, a team that was on the verge of relegation against some of the greatest teams to ever play. He was up against some of the greatest clubs. I mean, AC Milan, for example, that late 80s AC Milan team pretty much was one of the greatest teams to ever play a game. And he had to go up against them. He had to go up against a very competitive and strong Inter side, a very competitive and strong Juventus side that was led by Platini. And he really was up against it.
He was.
He was completely up against it. And I don't think any of the recent players would have been able to pull that team to that height.
I don't think so.
Other than Maradona.
I don't think so because
doing it.
I don't think so because if you look at the timeline, right? So if I just quickly look at the timeline and explain the timeline. So he's gone to Napoli in 1984, a second division side.
Yeah.
Almost, right?
Yeah.
1986, so that's when he was at his peak with Napoli and they won the Scudetto 10th of May 1987.
Yeah.
In June of 86, he had won the World Cup with Argentina.
Yeah.
So World Cup in Argentina in 86. Fast forward 8 months, first ever Scudetto with Napoli.
Yeah.
Won a Coppa Italia in that same year in 1987.
Wow.
Wins the UEFA Cup in 1989 with Napoli. Wins a second Scudetto with Napoli in 1990. Makes the final of the World Cup against West Germany. Yeah. If you remember, they lost that on a 1-0 penalty.
Yeah.
And then got suspended in April of 91.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where it all kind of spiraled after that.
It did.
Yeah.
And then you saw Napoli in Serie B not long after that.
Yeah.
That just shows the calibre of one player.
That's
what
right.
he did anyway.
What he did and how he lifted that team. Yeah, no, it's certainly great to look back on and look back at it all. So tell us, Marco, what's on for the next 12 months? What's the plans for this year?
Look, to organise, we organise players. We don't do teams. We only organise retired players if we can. And depending on who the player is, they either come here to do clinics with young children, the ages of 5 to 15. Some don't do clinics. Some just want to come here and do an appearance fee. Some are affiliated with an A-League club where they'll go to their business luncheon and do a speech. depends on the player if they can speak English as well, because not all Italian players can speak English.
Yes.
So that's the challenge as well.
Yeah.
So this year we're looking at bringing another significant player that retired in the last 10 years. It's still well known.
Yeah.
And although we speak to a number of different key players, we've got other friends in the industry as well that they may need our help, or they can help us with what we need to do.
Well, that sounds
it's a small industry.
Yeah, it is. It sounds exciting. It's great to see that you've got someone else that's in the pipeline. I know it's not all formal yet, and that's probably where you're being a bit tight-lipped about it. But that's great. That means that.
Well, the reason for that, Joe, is you mentioned that the players coming out, and tomorrow it'll be all over social media, and it's never happened. And I've seen so many in the last couple of years of certain players that are coming to Melbourne and Sydney. Yeah. I've also, to the point that I've seen articles written or a flyer made that they're coming, and it's never happened. So we want to do the right thing by
everyone,
by the fans. Once it's concrete, we'll be the first one to promote it.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Well, that's awesome, mate. Mate, I think we've had a good chat. Is there anything else you wanted to sort of mention to the audience at all?
Look, I like anyone, I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
For me, it's a passion.
Yeah.
And a lot of the projects that I do, especially with the memorabilia, we donate that back to charity.
Oh, great.
I'd
like to get some footage of that if we can as well. There's some great kits here.
Yeah, look, I've been collecting for the last 30 years by accident.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is my cousin obviously had the ability to play at the high level, and then he was able to send me some of his shirts that he wore, including even training shirts as well. And they just got kept in the closet as a kid, and then growing up, I actually made a point of showcasing what I had, and I've got the majority of the shirts that I have here is from the golden era from 1985 to 1995.
That's great.
So those 10 years, in my opinion, of the Serie A's heights, and knowing that I do this as a passion, I've got friends in the business that have had shirts of their own, one or two, hidden in their closet, and they've gifted that to me as well.
Awesome.
Because I said it's a better place where it's sitting with you as opposed to my wardrobe. So
great.
Just want to say thank you for the opportunity as well, because social media is great, but there's a lot of different people doing different things, and it can get really noisy out there with who's doing what and who's available. And
I appreciate that, and like for me, it's really simple. I like doing talking about things that I'm interested in, and this is obviously a big passion of mine, and that's why we probably could have stayed here and talked for at least another 2-3 hours.
Yeah, definitely.
Mate, so thank you for today.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll keep the conversations going as well. Right now, I think what we'll do is we'll take some footage of these kits and let everyone get a bit of an idea of what sort of an amazing collection you have before we let everyone go.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Greg.
All right, Marco, give us a tour.
Look, it's 30 years in the making. So last 30 years, I've been collecting either match-worn shirts or player-issued shirts. The difference is the player-issued shirts were never worn. Back in the golden era of the Serie A, each player was given 2 shirts. Some players only wore the one, then they either gifted the second one or they kept it. But what I've done, I've got every ball from the World Cup since 1974, since the World Cup 74, 78, 82, 86.
So these are all the official World Cup balls?
Official World Cup balls.
Right.
Italian 90.
Italian 90 ball signed.
Signed by Schilacci.
Wow.
And Giannini. Then you got USA 94.
That's my favourite World Cup, USA 94.
USA 94.
Didn't end well for us, but
So I've got all the way back to 74 and obviously to the last World Cup.
Where's the Brazilian one? I think that was the World Cup I went to, the 2014. Is that the bazooka? There it is. I remember that one.
There you go, the bazooka.
That was a great one. Yeah.
So these shirts were match worn and signed. So match worn and signed
That was when Del Piero came to Sydney.
Sydney,
He
yeah.
played at Sydney FC. Yep.
In 2012.
Yep.
That's just the one that we did for Italian Football Legends, signed by Scalacci 2022.
Yep.
Match worn and signed by Messi 2010.
Wow.
Player issued, not worn, but signed by Francesco Totti just last year. Signed by Franco Baresi.
The great Baresi.
May last year from the golden era.
I love that kit. Love it.
1992.
That's the 92 AC Milan kit, right?
Yeah. That's the golden era of AC Milan when they won 4 or 5 in a row.
Unbeaten for 2 years.
Unbeaten for 2 years. They came to Melbourne as well, Melbourne and Sydney, back in 93.
Yep. I went to that game. Yeah. I loved it. Yeah.
1998,
Baggio.
Obviously, Higuain. This one I got signed. Thank you to my friend Vincenzo from Napoli. We got this signed last year. This one's match worn. Giuseppe Giannini, and he signed it.
Love it.
This is in a friendly game in 1989. So basically, when my cousin played for Napoli, I had the ability to have match-worn shirts, and then with the Diego Maradona ability to get his signatures, I did that very, very, very late afterwards, like 2010, 11 and 12, when Diego Maradona was in Dubai when he was coaching. So what I did, when I collected them, put them in my wardrobe, and then when I knew I was a lot older to travel, when I knew that he was like in Dubai, we got this signed.
Because that's a very rare Napoli type of red.
Third.
That's their third kit, right?
So if you so the blue was always their first, the white was their second, the red was their third. They only wore the red twice a year.
Yeah.
When they played likes.
Like I can't even remember them wearing it.
Yeah. So they wore red very, very rarely. And this is from 1989, 1990 when they won the second Scudetto, 1989 first shirt. That's a Diego Maradona shirt, not match worn, but from that era, signed a few years later. This one as well. This is a long sleeve, and back then the shirts were made in different material.
Yeah.
So if you feel it's almost like wool.
Yeah.
Another rare 1986, 87 shirt. 87, 88, because I had one in 1987, and I wore that for the 87, 88 season. 87, 88, 87, 88, match worn and signed years later. Not match worn, but signed. And that one there was...
That was the away kit, I remember.
This one here was produced by the original brand called NR, which is Nicola Raccuglia. That's what NR stands for. He's still alive today. In the last couple of years, he's reproduced some of the NR
I love the replica.
classics.
I actually love the replicas. Like, especially if it's, you can't get originals. It's too hard to get originals these days.
It is. So if you look online, NR is reproducing some of the classics of that 86 to 90 era, including Roma as well, because they were sponsored by NR for a couple of seasons. And so this one is replicated to the original form, with using the original stencils as well. I was reading up online, they used the original stencils of the numbers, because the numbers were stitched on as well.
Look at that. They don't make them like that anymore.
They don't, and that's my passion as well, having all these shirts, having the ability to have access to them. And the other one was the 1985 Zico.
Yeah, Zico.
Shirt.
Look at that. The Brazilian legend. Udinese had Zico.
Udinese Zico, which thanks to my cousin, this was donated many years ago. My cousin also played with Zico during that era, prior to taking going to the Nations.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Marco.
Right,
That's a great collection.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.